Weather extremes and ongoing drought aren't going away. Instead, let's learn how to work with them. Karen Guz, Vice President of Conservation for the San Antonio Water System, explains how we can adopt garden style wherever we live. How are you doing, Karen?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks so much for being here. Weather extremes. Some people are really worried about these sort of the droughts, the freezes, the intense rains. Should they be worried about it? And what sort of approaches can we do to sort of deal with these curveballs that we're getting?
Well, the good news is that we live in a place that has a pretty broad and deep plant palette to choose from. But what's been hard for folks, I think, in the last couple of years, as you said it, is that juxtaposition of really hard freezes stressing some plants, followed by many days over 100 degrees without rain.
Right.
So we have seen some plants not thrive that previously did very well. And I think that just opens up the conversation for gardeners to talk to each other about what's still thriving and has our plant palette maybe shifted a bit. There may be plants that 10, 15 years ago, everybody said were a great idea.
Right.
And maybe now we're going to add a little flag of caution. If you put this in and we get a hard freeze, it may not do so well anymore.
I think one of the big challenges too is that people tend to think, well, what's a plant I should use, when maybe the question should be, and to your point, what plant communities should we look at?
And we try to talk to people about a couple key concepts, recognizing that for San Antonio Water System, we've surveyed our customers, and most of them want a more diverse landscape, but they have no knowledge. Most people are not master gardeners.
Right.
So they want advice. And so we try to give them advice that's going to help them have something exciting to look at every season. And as you said, a somewhat diverse palette of plants in that landscape. These are living plant communities.
Right.
And if what you want is something, I've had a customer once say to me, well, I want something that's going to be evergreen and blooming all year. That would be plastic, and we don't recommend that. So, you know, we have to temper the advice we give people with the reality of this is what to expect.
A big component of your work also is with water conservation. What are some of the bigger changes and patterns that you've noticed with this increasing importance on water conservation within our landscapes?
Most of our plants are making it. There are always going to be, when we have an extreme weather event, whether it be a freeze or a drought or even too much rain, we're going to have a few specimens tank and die.
Right.
In our home landscapes and commercial landscapes and in the native areas that are not irrigated. And you look around and you see, you know, what happened? Why is that live oak not making it? And 20 others around it are. I don't have an explanation. We don't know. We'd have to do a postmortem that's unrealistic.
Right.
So the good news is I think most things are making it. What we did also see, though, is some things just didn't look their best. Some of the plants that normally blooming perennials that bloom in the summer, they were looking kind of peaked when it was 100 degrees so many days in a row with no rain.
Right.
Most of them didn't die.
Right.
I'm sorry, they didn't look their best.
Embracing a water conservation approach is dormancy.
Thank you for bringing that up, because we try to talk about this concept of summer dormancy. That a lot of our plants that are adapted to our region have strategies for getting through these long dry periods that South Central Texas is just going to be prone to. They may, you know, do leaf firing and not have active photosynthesis going. They may just slow down growth. If they don't, they may have extensive roots. So if you put them in an area where they're root bound, not going to go well. So that's a key thing to keep in mind, that it is not natural, for example, for grass to be green in the summer.
Right.
If you drive around the hill country, our native grasses are generally not green in the summer months. They go into a form of dormancy. That's how they survive.
To be fair, though, they might be green if it's a mild year, though. I've definitely been around, I'm sure you too, when we've had water and it not be as hot. I don't think that's happening as often.
Right.
But it can be. But that also comes from a different expectation. The native plants aren't just great with drought because they happen to be. They actually evolved from that. So they have that capacity. So I think that's something that understanding, and as we like to say, get down with the brown, because it's actually a strength that's something that's really important. What are some examples of plants that you're seeing make it through some of these challenging conditions?
You know, I've been talking to my friends at work who are a bunch of garden geeks
Yes.
about, so you guys are driving around, what are you seeing? What do you see in your yards? And we've done an exercise at our events called Survive, Thrive, or Died.
Okay.
About the last couple of years. And one of the things that is a takeaway is the answer is different depending on who you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I use Blackfoot daisy as an example. I'm underwhelmed. I haven't had good luck with that plant.
Right.
Other people gushed about it and said it was fantastic during the drought.
Mm-hmm.
So there are plants that it depends on where they are.
Right.
Are your soils just right for it? Is the amount of sun it's getting just right for it? And then maybe it might have thrived in the drought. There's a short list of things like mountain laurel. Just shrugged off the freezes and the drought. Yopon holly, no problems. We've all seen Esperanza blooming on the roadside where nobody's watering it and it's hot as Hades there.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a short list of heat-loving plants that thrived. Then we also kind of have a list of ones where we'd put the caveat, probably won't look its best in these harsh conditions.
I think something that people too, in trying to solve this problem, is that they also aren't necessarily understanding that it's not necessarily one of these curveballs, so to
Yeah.
speak, that's causing the issue. Sometimes it's multiple. So we have super heat and then a crazy freeze and a
Yeah.
lot of water. Well, not one of those events really caused the problem, but all three does, and that sort of adds that complexity too. So, but that's gardening, right? Experimentation, right?
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be a singular answer. And I think, to your point, that's a really interesting exercise with survive, thrive, or die. I think it was that people will observe plant performances differently from site to site. What about planting after drought? So if people are
Yeah.
looking to refresh their landscape, what would be some go-to elements that you would say would be something to look for?
So there's a lot of debates in what should be a drought-resilient landscape. One I want to take off the table is that we are not promoting rockscape.
Okay.
What I call rockscape. Rockscape
Okay.
means
Right.
I'm just giving up on having a living landscape and I'm going to lay down rock.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the taste police. I don't think it's pretty,
Right.
but it's also not so easy to take care of.
No.
You're going to get leaves and things growing in that, and it's going to drive you crazy. It's also a
Right.
heat sink. So we are suggesting to people that they think about if they're going to have grass, think about where it's functional. Make sure you've got a drought-tolerant one. Make sure you've got soil there. And then think through your landscape and look at some free designs that are available to understand we have seasons. And if you plant all heat-loving perennials, you're going to be kind of bored in the winter when those freeze back.
Right.
So we try to talk to people about balanced landscape. Think about, you may have an outdoor living area, you may have some functional grass somewhere, and then you're going to have a lot of native, pretty resilient plant material that hopefully every season gives you something to look forward to.
Okay. So a dynamic landscape.
Very much so.
Okay.
That's kind of the advice we're giving.
Right.
We have free designs on our garden style sanantonio.com website. We call it Plant by Numbers.
Wonderful.
And so we find people who aren't expert want to 200 square feet. That's like 2 parking lots sizes,
Okay.
together. And we say, so take this 200 square foot problem area. Maybe your grass isn't thriving in the corner bed, the strip close to the pavement, the deep shade where the grass can't grow anyway. And we have free designs for people to kind of pick the style they want and then choose the plants that pop into the suggested design. One of the nice things about this region is we welcome people from all over the country and all over the world, really. And they come here and they're like, I don't know what these plants are. So this is supposed to be a place for one-stop shopping. Of course, you can
Right.
find all the San Antonio water system incentives there, but there's also videos. There are free resources to download. There's a weekly e-newsletter you can sign up for to find out what's happening in the landscape right now. Because we know people are seeking that resource that's very specific to here and may be very different from where they came from.
Well, Karen, I want to thank you so much for coming and share all your information about garden style San Antonio, and I think that is a wonderful resource. I think not just for San Antonio, but for all of Central Texas. So I appreciate you reviewing all of these challenges we have, and look forward to the amount of solutions that y'all offer.